This is Outnumbered, and I'm Melissa Francis. Here today is Harris Faulkner, Lisa Boothe, radio host and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall, and joining us on the couch, the opinion editor for the Washington Times and Fox News contributor Charlie Hurt.
Yay!
Charlie, how you doing? Happy New Year to everybody.
New Year to you.
Yeah? You got some Red Sox going. Happy New Year to you.
Oh, look at those.
You're still celebrating Christmas.
Are those candy
these
canes?
Are Christmas socks.
I think Charlie and Leslie
You know what?
we coordinated ties,
I like
shoes,
it when
socks,
somebody hangs
dress.
on to the season.
I can't let go.
Okay, Leslie, let me ask you, you know, it has been a failing on both sides of the aisle to get this done, and I think Charlie's right in the sense that there's so much politically at stake. You don't want to give Donald Trump a win, you don't want to be seen as, but the one thing we saw work was criminal justice reform, and it seems like some have suggested that maybe there could be a ruling by coalition rather than by party. Can you get coalitions together who want things and can kind of horse trade for that? Is there a possibility for that on immigration?
I'm not sure, but immigration, I think, is an area where Democrats can win, and let me tell you why. Even though you have a Republican majority in the House, in the Senate, even though you have legislation that would get to the president's desk and he wouldn't sign it, if Democrats can address, and it is a big item to address, comprehensive immigration reform.
Yeah.
And when we talk about comprehensive immigration reform, remember, we're talking about DACA, the Dreamers.
Yeah.
We're talking about those, like Harris rightly mentioned, millions of people in this country who are in limbo legally. We're talking about security and border security.
Right.
And what does that look like going forward? We're also talking about, in a state level like the state I live in, California, sanctuary city and legislation. That legislation need to be changed or rewritten. If the Democrats can work together, and I am confused by some of the division already, haven't we learned our lesson from 2016? When you look at some of the division already happening, when you have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying, you know, I'm not going to vote for this that Pelosi's putting out or that, and
She also thinks she can subpoena people.
Well, I think she thinks she can be Nancy Pelosi, and I'm sorry, but she needs to sit back. She's new, and watch maybe a little bit how it's done. I think immigration is an area where Democrats will shine if they can put forth something that is passed in the House, even if the Senate and the President reject it.
But you know, earlier we were talking about this is a problem. Everyone deserves blame for this. Republicans have absolutely have just, or I would say a little bit less, but Republicans are to blame for the problem. Democrats are definitely to blame for the problem. And the reason that we're in these shocking times is that Donald Trump got elected running on this issue of immigration. And he did something that no other politician seems to do in recent times, and that is actually mean what he ran a campaign on. And he actually wants to do something to fix the problem. And there are all kinds of...
But does he want to do something to fulfill a campaign promise?
Yeah.
Or does he want to do something to truly improve border security?
I think both.
Well, can we also just admit that both parties have supported a wall? In essence, both parties have supported a physical barrier along the southern border.
That is so cathartic.
And even the New York Times, yet the government is shut down over an issue that they essentially both support.
It's a word.
And
over a word.
But exactly.
Not an actual concept.
Well, and the New York Times even admitted last year that this concept works. They admitted in San Diego, fencing there, that illegality there is 5% of what it once was. So clearly this works. Think about it. If you're walking someplace, there's a physical structure in front of you that you can't pass through. You're going to go someplace else, right? A physical structure works at the southern border. And the problem with trying to do a more comprehensive immigration reform, as you mentioned, Leslie, is border security and preventing further illegality is the preeminent issue, because the big thing is you need to incentivize individuals for wanting to make that journey and try to legally enter the United States. And if you don't address that, nothing else matters.
But it isn't the barrier that brings them or stops them. Like former Governor Rick Perry said in border state of Texas, you know, they're going to go over it, they're going to go under it, they're going to go around it. One of the problems that we have in our state addressing agriculture, one of the problems we have in the state I live in, California, is you have corporations hiring these individuals. If you dangle the carrot of opportunity, they're going to come. And what we've seen over the past decade, is we've seen a reduction in border crossings. We've seen a reduction of people coming here illegally. And why? Because for a while the economy was going down. Those job opportunities weren't here. And that's what many of them are coming for if they're not fleeing violence in some of the areas.
That's absolutely true, and you're absolutely right about that. And the solution to that is E-Verify, where if you do have to address the behavior by the corporations is the way to do it. And that is finding people who are hiring illegal aliens.
Mitt Romney, I argue, is exploring in some ways, too, because he did some exploring yesterday with what's possible.
Yeah, and he's desperate for relevance. Obviously, he ran for president in 2012, a year that should have been an easy win for Republicans. He lost. He failed miserably. He
got some shade.
Ran a terrible campaign and was a terrible candidate. This is a guy who was, when he was running for governor of Massachusetts, claimed to be a more enthusiastic supporter of abortion than Ted Kennedy, and then changed his mind when the situation changed. He's a typical politician. You can't believe anything he says. And so obviously he's desperate for relevancy. And so he writes this. He gets into bed with the Washington Post, and he writes this thing about Donald Trump, reminding everybody why he lost the election. And, if you really don't like Donald Trump, then you should hate Mitt Romney, because the three people who paved the way for Donald Trump are Mitt Romney, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton. And if it hadn't been for the three of them, we probably wouldn't have had a guy like that.
Okay, Charlie's reading my notes.
She's got her
Mitt
fact
Romney
check.
cannot be believed. When he was governor of Massachusetts, pro-choice, flipped to an
I swear I didn't read that.
Were you reading my notes
No.
now? You know what? He doesn't want to be senator of Utah. He wants to be president.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. Remember, he came out so vehemently opposed to Trump, but then sat down with his tongue wagging when he thought that he was going to be...
When he got endorsed.
You know, when he was going to be in the cabinet, right? And he was going to be Secretary of State. And all of a sudden, he's like, oh, I like you now.
Now I hate you
now,
again.
Mr. Trump. And now he hates him again.
Now I hate you.
So I don't know if he'll, in a sense, fall in line with the rest of the Republicans, especially when he's like, I created Obamacare, and then he has to vote to dismantle it with his party.
You know what? The current fight with the president right now is, in my humble opinion, Leslie, something that this plays a role in. I know the president has said this is what it's all about. This conceivably is her last bite at the apple politically. And she's been around for 30 years. Oh, I can't imagine her with another speakership after. I mean,
she's already said she wouldn't.
Yeah, well,
and that,
but the party,
she
has said she wouldn't, but the party seems to be saying you shouldn't.
Right.
Which is a completely different conversation. And when you have a couple years from now, and Ocasio-Cortez and others, Hakeem Jeffries, by the way, the party did slide him some leadership because he was one of those who was looking at running against her, Clyburn and some others for speakership. So she has been able to quiet that down. Some people have gotten some things that they've wanted. There are only so many things you can pass out.
Well,
so there's another generation coming.
And there should be. Quite frankly, you know, on both sides of the aisle. I mean, I think especially for the Democrats, you're seeing the people that have been elected into the House are definitely much more diverse group of Democratic legislators. And
now, when you say diverse, what do you mean? Do you mean women? Do you mean?
I mean women, Native Americans, Hispanics, gays, Muslims. Definitely more diverse than the last Democratic House that we had and when we had the majority. So now I think going forward, yes, Nancy Pelosi is, you know, old school Democrat. I think it's good because she can hit the ground running. She knows what to do. She's strong. She has people that respect and like her and dislike her, but respect and like her on both sides of the aisle. But having new people, new blood, and a younger and more diverse face of the Democratic Party is needed going forward.
Because the word diverse to me, Lisa, means ideas as well. You didn't mention that, but your party is leaning so far left, it's practically going to tip over.
True. I think part of our party is the socialist faction of it.
Particularly the loudest voices. But I've been kind of It's sort of interesting that as this new Congress is sworn in and beginning, we're at an impasse in the government funding. And I sort of think, sadly, it's sort of ominous and sort of a what's to come over the next 2 years, right? That we're already beginning this congressional term with a disagreement, you know, fractions, and essentially I really think that's what the next 2 years are going to be like. I really do. I think it's foreshadowing of what's to come in the sense, I don't think there's going to be a lot of agreement between the Democrat-controlled House and the Republican-controlled Senate or the White House. I think there's going to be a lot of disagreements, a lot of fighting, a lot of investigating on behalf of Democrats in the House, and it's going to be a lot of dysfunction.
I don't agree. I think there are areas like infrastructure and trade that you can have bipartisan support. And historically, if you look at the polls, historically, America likes a divided Congress.
They like a divided Congress, but they don't want to see everything ground to a halt, and they don't want to see where it impacts. I mean, I think it's fair to say it impacts everybody's lives, that immigration has fallen apart. Whether it's because you live in an area near the border, or because you know someone whose status is uncertain, or you're frustrated by the ways of how the laws have played out, or you pay taxes, so you know you're paying for things. I mean, no matter how you slice it, these are people that were elected to fix problems, and they have a problem that's festering, and they're not fixing it.
Absolutely not fixing it. And when your diversity of ideas includes socialism, in a major, formerly, I would argue, legitimate party, that is absolutely terrifying. The number of new Democrats and perhaps even some old Democrats who actually really do embrace socialism. It's frightening. But I don't think you're not going to pry this speakership, this gavel out of Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah. No, anytime soon. I totally disagree with that.
Thanks for skipping Clint Eastwood's real words.
I think the only way that it happens is that if they overplay their hand over the next 2 years and they lose the House again the way Nancy Pelosi lost it.
But if she's successful in her position as House Speaker, why, if it's not broken, why fix it?
Well, yeah, I'm sure that's why I'm sure
that'll be her argument for sure. I think, Harris, are you going to give us a rundown on some numbers?
But going back to what Leslie was saying, and I think they would be so smart to listen to you and stay away from all the investigations and actually try to find things that they can work with Republicans on. But the immigration thing is a perfect example. They're putting forth these solutions, these ideas, that all because they know the president has already said he's not going to sign anything without that
but Charlie, I would say
funding for the wall.